What's going on, guys? It is Jack Gillis 1875 here, and it's been a little while since I've done something like this, but we are back with an interview. I know it's been such a long time, but I'm going to bring some good content out, some good exclusive content as well from mostly Scottish women's football. And tonight I'm delighted to be joined by St Mirren women captain Karen McCabe. So thank you so much for taking your time out to speak to me today, Karen.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thanks for having me.
Great, it's great to have you on. Obviously, I've not spoke to a St Mirren player before, so it's going to be good to have a St Mirren player on the channel for the first time. Actually, it's the first club outside of Hibs I've actually interviewed a player from. And you guys might have noticed that my setup is a bit strange tonight. That's because we've had some technical difficulties, but it's good to be back. We'll just jump right into the interview. So, Karen, the main point of my interview today is I'm a big fan of German football. I'm repping the Erste FC Frankfurt t-shirt tonight. And St Mirren went on a pre-season tour of Germany. And my first question for you is, how did this pre-season tour of Germany come about? And what were the feelings when you and the rest of the squad found out that you would actually be going over to Germany?
So I'm not sure if you know, but we actually went last year. How that came about is the team hosting a tournament just basically reached out on the internet for a couple of teams to play, got in contact with St Mirren, asked if we would go. For one reason or another, we decided it would be good to go and try something new. So we went across and played in the tournament last year. And then I think I accidentally signed us up for another tournament, not realising. So I thought the guy was inviting us back for that tournament again for the next year. And I already knew that we were going back. So I said, yeah, that's absolutely fine. And then when I was speaking to the manager about it, they said, like, the guy's not here. What do you mean? So I'd accidentally signed us up for another tournament for the week before. So we decided to go make a longer trip of it. So we went for 11 days this year. Just sheer luck, really, that we ended up there and then ended up back. But such a good experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, you've arrived in Germany, and there's, like you said, you were there for a bit of an extended period of time. And when you were going around Germany, looking at the facilities and obviously the sort of access that women's football clubs have to things in Germany, how does it compare to Scotland for you, compared to what St Mirren have access to, for example?
Sorry, I'd lost you, but
Right. So just to repeat the question, basically, St Mirren, obviously, as a fourth division club, League One, how do the facilities in Germany compare to the facilities that Scottish teams have access to?
some of it's kind of similar. I would say in Germany there's just more availability. Obviously, women's teams there still have the same, like hurdles that we have here, but when we were just kind of roaming around exploring the places, you were coming across pitch after pitch after pitch, and like university campuses have pitches. We stumbled across the Rostock under team training through the day, and even just when you look at the equipment and things that they have, they were miles ahead of where some teams here are, and they're playing at similar levels to us. So I think for us, maybe not so much us as a team, but I know a lot of teams in our league are maybe using council facilities and things, and I wouldn't really say that's the same over there. They more have specific training complexes for each team.
Absolutely. I think that's something I noticed myself from a German point of view. I've watched a few women's games in Germany across the leagues, and you definitely see that they do have dedicated facilities, and that it is, they're not just using the municipal football pitch, they actually are getting access to that dedicated facilities. So, moving on to my next question, obviously, one of the teams you played a few local clubs. One of the teams you played was HSG Warnemünde, who are obviously from Warnemünde up in the Baltic Sea coast in the former East Germany. So, what was it like playing them, and what sort of level would you say Warnemünde were at for people who are not so familiar? Even I haven't heard of Warnemünde, and I'm a massive German football nerd. I knew the town, but I didn't know they had a women's team. So, what were they like, and what was their sort of level?
So we actually played them a few times. They were one of the teams we were using as training complex. So when I was having a look around, even rummaging through their stuff, like some of their men's pendants, I maybe didn't recognise the teams that they'd been playing against. So the level, I would say, would be lower than us. And in other times, like they got to semi-final and we were drawing nothing each with them. So I think they maybe have the same challenges as here in that if they've got a full squad, they can compete. But like women's football. Maybe other people have other commitments or like work and whatever. So we played them on a midweek friendly. Like you say, it was on the coast. It was absolutely pouring down. Not long, they'd managed to squeegee all the pitch and whatever else. So similar issues to here. We played them off the park. We beat them 4-0. We ended up we could only play 60 minutes because of the weather. Mm-hmm. So I think we went into then play them again in the tournament thinking, you know, we would be a better team than them. And they actually got to the semi-final. We went to penalties with them. So it just shows you that on their day, yeah, they're a good team. But it's like, yeah, there's hurdles in the way for them as well.
Absolutely, I think that's probably what happens with women's football anywhere. That there is always going to be those hurdles, which is unfortunate. But I completely agree. So that must have been an interesting experience anyway, going up to Warnemünde. How did you find Warnemünde as a town in general? I think a lot of people have this perception that Eastern Germany in particular is maybe a bit bleak. I know for a fact it isn't, but for people outside that maybe have that view of East Germany, what was it like going up to Warnemünde, and how did you find the town?
So I'm not sure if you're there, but
it should be.
Right, so when we went, we took a train, and in our heads, you know, we were going back and everything was going to be matching concrete flats and whatever else. And we turned up and it was like a fisherman's village. And the way the locals explained it to us is people from Berlin with a lot of money have a second property there. So it was actually like a lot more well off. And sorry, 2 seconds. It was a lot, quite an affluent area. There was lots of boats and things like that. So we went on a walking tour around the area, a local, and they basically showed us the mix, like East Germany and West Germany, where they'd come together in modern time. So like architecture matched some of the ways you'd expect it to be, and in other places that had maybe been damaged had been, you know, repaired in a modern way to show like they were keeping up with modern times. So it was actually really interesting, and it's one of those places you would never ever be in your life. And then when you go and you see it, you think, I wish other people knew these places existed, because it was hours away from Berlin. And nobody in their right mind would think I'm going to fly over to Germany and then drive for hours to go and see a tiny wee village. But there's so many interesting things to see. So, you know, you should take the chance if you get it.
No, that's absolutely. I like to hear that. You know, I've been to some places in Eastern Germany, mainly on trains to change trains, like towns like Dessau, stuff like that, and it's the exact same. So it's good to hear that. And like I said, Warnemünde, what was their setup like in terms of their stadium and stuff like that? Was it quite small, or would you say it's maybe like west of Scotland, east of Scotland league standard? What would you say, comparing it to maybe something we'd have back over here?
I would say below teams we would have at that level here in like attention, but ability maybe matches. But they had two pitches, and then like a sports hall, a fully like organised, what you would consider like a council PE centre type thing. Mm-hmm. And then they had like their clubhouse and a kitchen and, you know, changing rooms, things like that. But when you look at some of their like pre-season results, I'd maybe checked some of the men's team, and I don't know if you know Hansa Rostock, but they'd played with them, who are a big team, you know, and got a result. But us over here maybe don't know who that is, like the Warnemünde team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the thing. Hansa Rostock are a bit of a religion up there, and if somebody's a big fan of East German football, anything sort of north of Berlin, it's all Hansa Rostock. I don't know if you probably noticed that yourself. That's what actually brings me on to the next question. You probably noticed yourself all the Hansa Rostock graffiti and there'd be Hansa Rostock stickers everywhere. Yeah, I was going to ask you that. So did you get a good feeling of the football culture up there for the men's football for Hansa Rostock while you were there?
Yeah, so last year when we were there, I saw like Hansa Rostock stickers everywhere on every lamppost, and we were nowhere near Rostock at the time, but we were just kind of in that area where, you know, they were a well-supported team. And then when we were closer to Rostock this time, it's everywhere. It's, you know, when you're driving through like the motorways here, you maybe see the odd thing. This is just every building, every wall, every lamppost. You don't not see it. So we just been kind of roaming around looking for stuff, and even in what would be the equivalent of like Buchanan Galleries we went to, there's like the club shop, and like it's such a well-supported team. Everybody in the area, what they probably want to happen here, that people support the local team, actually does happen there.
Yeah, Absolutely. And like I said, anything north of Berlin, it's just Hansa, Hansa, Hansa. You know, it's you maybe get the odd Dynamo Schwerin fan, which is another big team up there, but it's all Hansa. Absolutely everything is Hansa up there. So I think, like you said, it's very rare to see it. Even when you're going through to Glasgow, you don't see much Rangers or Celtic stuff graffitied on the motorway. I remember, you know, you leave Berlin going south, and as soon as you hit Leipzig, you see Chemie Leipzig, RB Leipzig, not so much RB, they're not as popular, but Lokomotiv Leipzig as well. You see so much, which I just, you know, because I know German football, I'm used to it. But for somebody coming from Scotland that's not used to seeing stuff like that, it must be quite an experience. So
Yeah,
obviously, talking about Warnemünde, you're saying that people that have probably never heard of it from outside of Germany or wouldn't go out their way to go there. The only reason, and again, I'm a bit of a Germany nerd, the only reason I'd heard of Warnemünde was literally because of a Hansa Rostock banner I'd seen at a game. It said
yeah.
Fan Club Warnemünde. I thought, okay, right, looked it up. It was not, you know, it's quite a bit away from Rostock, but it's in that sort of neck of the woods. So
Mm-hmm.
it is definitely interesting that, you know, you guys have discovered that. And, you know, I think out of all the teams in Scotland to discover sort of town like that in Germany, you just don't expect it to be St Mirren, which I think is amazing. And it's good to see that St Mirren have that connection with Germany. So my next question I'm going to move on to is, obviously you've played in a pre-season tournament as well, and just played a certain Borussia Dortmund. You know, of course, because nobody's heard of them before. Some team from North Rhine-Westphalia that nobody knows about. But yeah, Borussia Dortmund, obviously a huge name, and not just German, but world football. So
Yeah.
their women's team play in the Landesliga, which is the fifth tier, fifth, sixth tier of German women's football. And what was it like playing? Just first of all, for the fact of the name, you know, this is question a bit of a two-parter. For the fact of the name, what was it like playing the Borussia Dortmund?
I think even the answer has two parts. Like when you look at it, it's so surreal. And like, you know, the big scoreboard's up, and at one point, like I'm looking around just to check the time, and the St Mirren badge is there and the Dortmund badge is there, and I think, geez, so like I'm playing Dortmund here, what's going on? And then on the other side of it is the minute you know that you're playing them, you're just focusing on the game and you kind of switch off to who you're playing. But similar to here, people don't like to see big teams do well. So the minute we were drawn against Dortmund, everybody wanted us to win because it wasn't the big team. So all these German fans were suddenly supporting us because it wasn't Dortmund. And when I was speaking to someone about it, they'd explained basically Dortmund had the opportunity to buy a third tier women's team, and the fans voted against it to say, you know, we're a workers team. We'll take something from the bottom and make it, you know, special for us. So even when you're explaining that to people, you think that should be well liked and supported, and it's just not, because all the connotations with men's football just go into women's football.
Hmm.
But when you take that aside, like you're playing Dortmund, it's unbelievable. You know, like it's a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it must be amazing to go from playing the likes of Stenhouse Muir or Edinburgh Cali to then going to playing Dortmund. So you come at the end of the season, you're playing against teams like Falkirk, Stenhouse Muir, Edinburgh Cali, teams like that, and then you suddenly hit, oh, we're playing Dortmund now. So that must be quite good. And I've got to say that's the reason I actually wanted to try and get this interview sorted was I came across it on Twitter. I was like, St Mirren are playing Dortmund. St Mirren women are playing Dortmund Frauen. Like, what's going on here? Because I actually know a few of the Dortmund Frauen fans, the guys that follow them hardcore, and I've written an article about Dortmund Frauen before for a German football magazine, and I've got to say, yeah, I think it's really unique how Dortmund have done it. So for you, looking at it from a sort of point of view coming from Scotland, was it a shock that such a big club like Dortmund hadn't done what Rangers and Celtic, for example, have done in the SWPL, which is they've just come in, bought a team. Well, Rangers and Celtic haven't bought a club, but see what I mean? Rangers and Celtic threw millions at just buying a team. Is that a shock for you that such a massive club hadn't went down the route of what Rangers, Celtic, Hibs, Hearts have done in the SWPL?
Yeah, like you suddenly have a lot more respect for them as a club, because you think with that name and that reputation, it would have been so easy to just take over a team and then they're already buying the success of them. But they chose, and like the fact that they'd even given the fans the choice, Like, I think that's completely different to what exists here. But then the other side of that is the Hansel Rostock women's team is like a select. So they do what men's teams here do that everyone hates, and they poach all the good players from the teams around them. And Dortmund just haven't done that, and they've chose to start from the bottom, and then it's a much more enjoyable success. So it's actually a long-term plan for football rather than just we'll buy a team, and if it doesn't work, we'll buy another one.
Absolutely. I think one thing I always said about Dortmund is it makes the growth of the women's game more sustainable in the future, that they're building something. It's not just like, for example, Eintracht Frankfurt have been massively accused of being unfair because they came in, they took over Erste FFC Frankfurt, who are a big women's team standalone, who had won the Champions League, and Eintracht just bought their license out and turned them into Eintracht Frankfurt. So, I think it's better the way that Dortmund have done it. And I wish more teams would do it like that instead of just coming in and just throwing millions of euros at it or pounds because they have the money, they're going to do it. I'm a Hertha Berlin fan myself, and we've taken a third division team's license over, but in a more sustainable way. So it's not been a hostile takeover. It's more been sort of what you've seen with a few Scottish teams where it's a player pathway at the smaller Berlin club called Hertha Zehlendorf, but then Hertha becomes the first team. So I suppose it's a bit like what Genfield Swift's done with St Johnstone, that it's their youth academies up until then the St Johnstone first team. So I think it's good to see it that way. So my next part of the Dortmund question is, what were they like to play against? How would you compare them to a team if you were to put Dortmund Frauen in a league in Scotland? So I'll ask a different question to put you on the spot. If you were to put Dortmund Frauen in a league in Scotland out of the SWPL 1, 2, and then Championship League 1, what league would you put Dortmund in?
If they walked straight into it, a SPL 2 team, promotion, like I wouldn't be surprised, but it's a totally different style of football. And if I described it to you in the most basic way that I could understand, would be like if you split a person in two, bottom half, we would be a stronger team than them, but top half, I would say that German football as a whole and women's football is so much stronger. So if we go in for a 50-50 like we do at home, it's a free kick. And if we go up for a header, we're knocked out the park. So the benefit for us of playing teams like that is, you increase your all-over strength. So I think if they could adapt that style, we obviously don't want to be having scrappy football, but the feedback I even got from watching was that they couldn't believe the way that we were playing. And it was more, Scottish football is obviously known for being physical, but that's just normal for us, and not even a free kick, that we couldn't understand, like, why is that given? Why are you stopping the game for this? And that they couldn't grasp the tempo. So maybe the good teams, they didn't really sit off you, but they let you play football at the back, and that doesn't really happen here. So it was good for us. I would say, yeah, second division, easy.
So definitely like a solid SWPL 2 club, maybe like the likes of Queen's Park or something like that. I think definitely that's interesting to hear. I'm sure the Queen's Park lot will like to hear that there's on a footing with Dortmund. And what were their players like? Because I know, but I've actually kept an eye on them for a long time after writing the article. And I know they've signed. I think they've got an Indonesian international or something like that. They've got a few internationals from lower ranked countries in Asia specifically. They've brought in a lot. So what were their players like to come up against? Because obviously you're a group of players that are mostly playing football in Scotland and around the sort of local area, and that's how you've ended up at St Mirren, or you've maybe played for teams at youth level. So, I know a lot of players because I used to work with Edinburgh City Women, so I know a lot of players come from sort of the youth teams of bigger clubs as well, or clubs higher up the pyramid as well. So what was it like for you coming up against players that have actually been capped at senior level for their countries and have played in like major international tournaments? I know the girl from Indonesia has played in the Asian Cup and stuff like that.
Hello.
Oh, sorry, I think the connection went again. I can repeat the question for you if you want.
Ask about players, but if you just start it again.
Yeah, no problem at all. So Basically, what I was saying was obviously from the point of view of youth players that have mostly come from the local area, or I know from volunteering with Edinburgh City Women that a lot of the players have come from like bigger clubs or clubs higher up the pyramids. Youth system. So, what is it like to come up against players like the girl from Indonesia, for example, that have played in major international tournaments like the Asian Cup and have been capped by their country, have scored for their country in these sorts of games? What was that like for you as a player?
I would say they'd maybe just have a slightly different mindset to us of it, their life's so professional, and we played in a 90-minute game the day before the tournament, fair enough, but the day after the tournament they'd scheduled two 90-minute games for after it, so it's not at all like they weren't on their holidays or anything, neither were we, but like they weren't taking that as like, oh, we've won, now we can relax. They were very much like, okay, next day, take it all as it comes. But the players, when we were speaking to them after the game, maybe they didn't have the best English, to be fair, and our German's obviously worse, but it was very much like, right, the game's done, thanks, see you later. It wasn't like there was nothing social about it, and it was, okay, we've came here to play football, now that we've played football, there's nothing else we've got in common, so see you later. So that would be the difference, the higher up the team. So like, we also played Hanover. Hanover are like that to an extent of, we've came here for a purpose, and once that purpose is finished, there's no other reason to stay and hang about with you. But it's just an eye opener. Like, you think that could exist here, and obviously that's a lower tiered team, but in a professional setup. It just shows you what teams are capable of if they're supported. So it was interesting. It's good to take those things back home with you.
Yeah, take it as a sort of learning curve. Absolutely, I do agree with you. And so, was that a bit of a shock for you? That's when you found out. Obviously, take the Dortmund name out of it. Was that a bit of a shock for you that coming into a club that low down? Because obviously in Scotland we don't really have a formal league system past about the fourth or fifth tier. So to play a sixth tier club like Dortmund, what was it like to see just how professional that Dortmund team were?
Mm-hmm. It's an eye opener. It's one of those things that they get off the bus and the squad just never ends. Like you're just watching wave after wave of player coming out, and like they look the part, they sound the part. It's just totally different from here. Like if we played a good team here in the cup, you'd expect to turn up, they'd get out their cars. It's not slagging women's football here, but there's just such a gulf in the leagues. So to see that, filtered all the way down to that level is completely, unknown to us here, that they've committed so much resources to that level of team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's excellent to hear. So we're a bit pressed for time. So what I'm going to move on to very, very quickly before we wrap this one up, and thank you so much for your time today, is my last question is obviously St Mirren going into the League One campaign. What are the sort of targets for this season going into the League One campaign? And are you hoping that you can maybe replicate the success of other SPFL sides? Like obviously Livingston have done quite well this season, got up in the SWPL2. Edinburgh City obviously won the league and did the double as well. So are St Mirren hoping to replicate that and what other SPFL sides are done, or what are you hoping to achieve in League One this season?
Yeah, similar type. Like, we'd be looking for promotion from that league. I think we've got the squad. Like we've shown last year, even we played Edinburgh City quite a lot of times. We drew them in the cup as well. They would beat us, but I think we were one of their harder games. And even like Livingston, we played them pre-season last season. I think those types of teams are surprised when they play us. Like, they maybe just think League One team, that's easy 3 points, or it's a bye in the cup kind of thing. And when they do play against a team like us, it's quite well structured, and the club are actually so far ahead compared to the level on the pitch, if that makes sense. So like, the club have chosen to do everything right from the beginning, and not take short-term success to get up the leagues and then go, oh no, there's nothing behind us here. Like, there's clear ages and pathways behind what they've done. So for us, yeah, like, try and push the success off the pitch onto the pitch for this season. There's no reason we couldn't be first, second, something like that, looking for promotion.
Absolutely, I'm glad to hear it, and I hope you do well in the upcoming season. I'll definitely be keeping an eye out. after that. Definitely seeing the Paisley St Mirren playing Borussia Dortmund was a big shock for me. So we're keeping an eye out on it. And I'm sure League One will be a very exciting and competitive league this season as well. So
Yep.
thank you so much for your time today, Karen. We got through the technical difficulties there. But thank you so much for a fascinating chat and a fascinating insight linking Scottish and German women's football. So once again, just thank you so much for joining me.
No problem at all. Thanks so much. It's nice to share the story of the trip, especially to non-St Mirren fans.
Oh, good stuff, good stuff. So thank you so much to everybody for watching. I did hope you enjoy it, despite the technical difficulties we've had. Remember, guys, to like. If you're new, please subscribe for more German and Scottish football content. And until later, I'll see you all next time. That's Jack out.